End of season awards on ESPN's Football Forecast. We're going to go through the most under the radar category. We've got ourselves 5 nominees. Let's make our way through them. We've also done a video talking about the Rookie of the Year. Got pretty heated. Nubaid wasn't happy with Toni's pick, so make sure you check that out. Let's start off with Gabriel. I think he is a little bit under the radar, and I think this is a good one for discussion, but it's an odd one as well in terms of winning it, because what you need to win most under the radar is shadow, because if you don't have the shadow, then a bit like a player that we were talking about in the last video, Kobbie Mainoo, there's no shadow. He is like the shining light. But I think with Gabriel, when you've got Saliba and everyone's so keen on Saliba, Gabriel maybe gets forgotten about a little bit. The defence has been outrageous this season for Arsenal. 14 clean sheets, 2.3 tackles and interceptions per 90. I think also importantly, kind of dealing with that left-hand side at times. I know Trossard's come into the team in recent weeks, but you've had different left-backs every single week, and he's had to kind of deal with that. Whereas the other side for Saliba, he's got Ben White, who just is always great and always there for him as well. So I think that is a bit under the radar in what has been an outrageously good defence. Do you guys agree?
I feel like my interactions with Arsenal fans make me a little biased I guess, what's the opposite of biased? Unbiased? I don't know what it is. But I'm against Gabriel, essentially. Because you've got Arsenal. I think Arsenal fans have spoken a lot about him, saying he's been better than Saliba and he should be the team of the year. He's been better than Van Dijk and so on and so forth. And I think he's come on a lot from last season. And my biggest criticism of him was he wants to jump out too often. He wants to get into duels. He wants to get into fights. And I think he's improved that a lot in his game. He's much better in possession. But I do also look at the last 3 or 4 games and go, if Arsenal are going to concede, it's not going to be because of Saliba. It's going to be because of Gabriel. Because I do still think he has those moments in him where he just switches off a little bit. And I look back to that Newcastle game, there's all that controversy. That situation doesn't happen if he clears the ball properly at the edge of the box. And in the end, he's the one who gets pushed. So I mean, hypercritical on a guy who's been very, very good this season. But that's why I can't put him under the radar.
Just a quick, would he get into most people's top 8 centre-backs?
That's a big list. That's a big list. Yes, of course he would.
You think he'd definitely get in there?
Yeah, I think he would. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess they would. But I'm just trying to figure out his under the radar level here, because how much spotlight is he getting? I think he's like the hipster lean. Like you go towards him because Saliba, obviously Saliba's good. You don't need to worry about that. I don't think he'll win it, but he's had a great season, of course. I've just put him under the radar there, haven't I? Anyway, next up, Jordan Pickford. Talk to me about Jordan Pickford, Tony.
Yeah, Jordan Pickford. I think 12 clean sheets, which is second most in the league. David Raya went on to go win the Golden Glove. But 70% save percentage, I think, is absolutely insane, especially with Everton and everything that's been going on this season. I think it's really gone under the radar because for those that don't really watch Everton, we just feel like, okay, point deduction, Sean Dyche ball, and they concede a lot of goals. But if you actually look at it, they keep clean sheets, and a lot of that is down to Jordan Pickford. We did speak about Jared Braithwaite earlier, but Jordan Pickford, who we know is England's number 1, is really good, but we don't probably take that into consideration when we watch him week in, week out. So I think he's definitely gone under the radar.
I think it's a good shout, just because the only reason there's news with a goalkeeper generally is when something goes wrong. And so he kind of ends up not hiding, but because too many things haven't gone wrong this year. He's had a really, really strong season for the club. The other thing I think on the other side of it is that the way Sean Dyche sets his team up is that the opposition will have shots, but difficult shots, because the way they will defend thinking about the goal as much as the space of the players around them. And so there's a lot of blocks that go on. And so with that in mind, that should lead to him possibly being able to make more saves, but has had a really, really strong season. Next up, Jared Bowen, Nubaid.
That's my guy. I think was it on here when I said he should be the heir to the throne when Mo Salah goes? I think it was on here.
I've said that,
16 goals, 10 point from a 10.21 XG. That's Jamie Vardy stats, by the way.
Yeah, that's
and he's done that regularly as well. 6 assists, 21% conversion rate, super high.
He's had to play centre forward a lot this year as well.
And he does it really well. I think one of the especially in the West Ham side, where a lot of the times they give up the ball and go, hit it up to him, can you hold it? I think he's probably like 5'10", 5'11", but he always holds up the ball, brings other players into the game. And then in the box, honestly, he's as good as anyone in the box. If the ball's bouncing around in there and it's somewhere near him, he always gets a shot on target. So for me, he is under the radar. People don't talk about him very often. And he would be the hire to Mo Salah when he left, but I think he's just signed like a 6-year contract.
I think, wow. Jared Bowen has? I was just going to say, it'd be interesting to see if, surely he's got to be looking to kind of, I was going to say, make that move, because I think he's good enough to play for those teams. Massive Jared Bowen fan. I think he has a tenacity that's different to a lot of the sort of right-sided winger forwards as well, which I like. It just makes him a little bit different. An unbelievable finisher, always has been, even since I remember seeing him play for Hull and tore us apart there. Matheus Cunha, 11 goals, 7 assists, 2 successful dribbles per game. He's kind of come from nowhere a little bit, because obviously big money and from a high-profile club, but it was at a time when Wolves couldn't rely on any striker, right?
Yeah, this is the thing. I think Wolves fans can say this. They've always been looking for that guy. And even though he's not Wolves' top goal scorer, still 11 goals, 7 assists, and 2 successful dribbles as well. I saw that at...
Per game.
Per game.
Not the whole season.
Not the whole season. But I saw that at United. I think he was the player when, even though we beat Wolves at the start of the season, he was a player running through our midfield and was thinking, oh, this guy, Matheus Cunha, is pretty good. And I know he came from Atletico and he was on loan last season from the end of January, but he didn't have that much of an impact, even though they still signed him. But much credit to him, because this is the definition of the under the radar. When was the last time you and your mate spoke about Matheus Cunha, what he's done for Wolves this season? I feel like the other players, Jared Bowen, we've mentioned, we know how good he is, but Matheus Cunha, 11 goals for Wolves and 7 assists. I feel like if Phil Foden got those stats, no one would bat an eyelid.
I think for a long period, people have said he's like a much of a muchness, and now I think he's pieced a few things together. He arrives in the box at the right time, because he's always had the ability to run through midfields. The guy, actually, you know what? I've looked at this list and I've changed my mind. The guy that I think, are you backing this guy? Last guy on the list?
Anthony Gordon. Yeah. Well, I mean, why not?
No, I've changed my mind to go. I actually think I'm not gonna give my answer away. I'm gonna let you.
Well, let's talk about Anthony Gordon then. So Matheus Cunha, yeah, I think again, in terms of the shadow of a, let's say, a mid-table team, he doesn't get the spotlight it deserves. I think he deserves huge credit. Absolutely tore Chelsea apart, and I think Gary O'Neill deserves a lot of credit. Him, Hwang Hee-chan, I think, has been really good. All those players that drive with the ball.
Hwang Hee-chan.
I knew there's a play in there for the Leipzig days. Yeah, I think he's right up there. Anthony Gordon, 10 goals, 10 assists, 13 big chances created, 1.4 successful dribbles per 90. He's made his England debut off the back of a great summer for the under-21s, top scorer. He played through the middle in that tournament. And for Newcastle, actually, I think what needs to be remembered here is the injury problems that they've had, and therefore he's had to be sort of a big threat for them. I did a video on him a while back after the Chelsea game. His movement is outrageous. His movement is absolutely outrageous. And I think he's got an enormous summer ahead of him. I think he starts for England. I think Rashford goes down to the bench. I know Southgate, you always kind of feel like he maybe has his favourites. I don't think that's the case with him. I think Anthony Gordon has to play on that left-hand side, in my opinion. And I think he could be lethal as well.
It's so fascinating when you see players at one club and then the next club. At Everton, if you profile Anthony Gordon, we would have all said hard-working winger, tracks his fullback. I think he's now gone, actually, I've got so much technical quality on me. His ability to just be in the right place at the right time is so good. And whether that's in situations where they're in transition or whether they're trying to play through a team, he always arrives in the right place. Honestly, I said this on social media, deleted it very quickly because people went mad, but he really reminds me of Sadio Mane, not in terms of the speed, but the intelligence off the ball, the work rate, the way fullbacks don't... If you're a right back, you don't want to come up against him because he's just constantly at it for 90 minutes. So I'm putting it out there right now. He's my guy. I've changed my...
Okay, wow, he's changed my mind. Yeah, I think, the fun thing I'd say on Gordon is that it's like double movements. But double movements with someone who's got outrageous work rate and is lightning, that's horrible. He'll make you quit as a fullback, and I always love to see that with players. And got a great finish on him as well. Could win some penalties as well, actually. Doesn't mind going down. So, yeah, in terms of the under-the-radar nominees, Tony, who are you going to go for?
I'm going to stick with my pick, Matheus Cunha, only because I think that's the definition of under the radar. We don't really give lights to these mid-table teams, and players like Gordon, I think, have had better seasons, but Newcastle's kind of what a big team is, a big market, so I'm going to go with Matheus Cunha. Okay.
Nubaid, you want to go with Anthony Gordon? I think, to your point, I think you made a good point there.
It was 50 million, though.
It's 50? Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 50 million.
Yeah, it's not that under the radar, but I think it's just it's the mid-table market.
Do you know, if this was from nowhere, this was the from nowhere category, I think I would get to Matheus Cunha. I think in terms of, And Anthony Gordon, I'm not sure we can give it to him. I don't think Jared Bowen gets enough flowers, so I'm going to give it to Jared Bowen. Guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below.